The abstinence theory. The abstinence theory was propounded by Nassau Williams Sr. According to Sr., interest is a reward for abstinence. When an individual sacrifices money for their income to lend it to another individual who may need it, this individual could have easily spent the money on whatever they may have wanted to, but instead they decide to lend it to somebody who may be in need of it. A basic idea of this theory is the abstinence theory of interest is interest that originates because the capitalists need to be compensated for choosing their wealth in a time-consuming production process, as opposed to consuming it in the present. This theory was criticized by many economists because, according to the theory, an individual feels unpleasant when they save as it reduces their consumption. So if I was to get a check and put some money aside, people may feel unpleasant because they can't use the full check. Although wealthy people may not feel that it is unpleasant while saving because they can still meet the requirements because they have money on the side, so putting money away to lend it to another person may not hurt them. Karl Marx is a man who changed the name of the abstinence theory. The name abstinence was replaced with the word waiting and was described saving in terms of waiting. Marx states that saving is done by transferring the present requirement to the future, and the person needs to wait for meeting those requirements. So what are different reasons people may want to save? For example, a couple of really main and common reasons why people do save are college funds. Parents may want to save money ahead of time to be able to send their kids to college without worrying about it. So over time, they may put money away and have enough money for the future to send their kids to college. Another reason will be to stay financially secure. And a little bullet off of staying financially secure would be to provide safety in case of an emergency. So here's a little graph that shows the equilibrium of savings and investments. If you look at the graph, the curve with the S on it will mean supply. The little q at the bottom is equilibrium for investments, and the R at the y-axis is the equilibrium for interest. Where the equilibrium intersects is where the supplies of savings curve intersects the investments of demand curve. This means the demand for savings is equal to the supply at the equilibrium rate of interest. Senior came up with 4 different elementary propositions. These are not assumptions, but these are facts. These propositions do not have to do with population advance, agricultural skill being equal between everybody, and labor and land cultivation. So the first proposition was every man desires to obtain additional wealth with as little sacrifice as possible. So that's a little self-explanatory, as nobody wants to be needing to sacrifice too much where they hurt themselves, but if they need to sacrifice a little without any pain, that'll be just fine. The second one is the population of the world is limited by only deficiency of those which habits each class of its inhabitants to lead them to require. The third one is powers of labor which may increase the wealth by using products means further production. And the last one is agricultural skill remaining the same in labor bestowed, aggregate return is increased, and the increase of return is not proportion to the increase of the labor. Distribution. So Senior divides society into 3 different classes. The first one, proprietors and natural agents. The second one, the laborers. And the third one, the capitalists. Each class has a different function in society, obviously, thus will receive remuneration for that function. So wages is a little difficult topic for Senior to define because he defines wages as a payment to labor for the exertion of body and mind. High or low wages may be used to describe money wages, real wages, or the total payment of wages relative to the total recipient of the capitalist. The only thing that lowers profits is a raise in wages. For example, if one was to own a business and they raise the wages of their employees, their profit will be cut a little bit. So there is no exact equation for abstinence or waiting, of course, but you can think of it similarly to compound interest. Compound interest equation is A, which is the amount of money accumulated after a certain number of years, including interest, equals the principal amount, or the initial amount you borrow or deposit, but in this case borrow, times 1 plus the annual rate of interest divided by the number of times the interest is compounded per year to the square root of the number of times the interest is compounded per year times the number of years the amount is deposited or borrowed for. And the equation is on the slide right there, just so that doesn't sound too confusing. An example of this would be an amount of $1,500 is going to be borrowed, paying an annual interest of 4.3%. So how much would need to be paid back after 6 years? Following the equation I put on the previous slide, that would be $1,938.84 is how much would be owed to the person who you borrowed the money from. So how much would the interest be? You would subtract the $1,938.84 from $1,500, which is the initial amount that you borrowed, and you would get $438.84 of interest after 6 years. And thank you guys.